This episode of the Fight Within podcast is presented to you by Meguiar's. For over 115 years, Meguiar's has been carefully creating and producing advanced formulas with cutting-edge chemistry to deliver a show car perfect appearance. Whether you're showing on the fairway, finalizing your car for auction, or simply getting your beloved car ready for a weekend drive, Meguiar's is ready to help with their premium car care products to make every automotive surface look its absolute best. Meguiar's, reflect your passion. Make sure to visit them at meguiars.com.
What's up, guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fight Within podcast. On today's episode, we wanted to go over just how we handle setbacks, some things that have happened to us recently, and especially you being a business owner, me being a former business owner, and failing. And
Failure.
I think for me, and we talked about it on last week's episode a little bit, was just how I started this company, 7 Media Solutions with a buddy. And we did, we literally called it 7 Media Solutions because we offered 7 services. Mm-hmm. But then we were like, hey, it's God's number. Let's do purple because it's the color of royalty. And we had all these really cool ideas. And my buddy that started it with me, he owned a print company before we started the digital marketing agency. And, he had some business troubles with a partner that he had brought in from another company and decided to close the print company and said, hey, let's start this, because I had always bugged him when we were running the print company. I was just a salesman there, and I'd always bugged them because I was like, hey, man, we need to start like a digital marketing agency, because a lot of the customers that we're getting are, they need business cards, they need brochures. Well, a lot of people that start companies are going to need a website. They're going to need a digital presence and marketing. This is so let's start one. It kind of always got pushed to the back burner. Yeah. And then once the print company went down, he goes, hey, let's do this. Let's do this thing. And so we started it, and a few months into it, he got a really neat opportunity to go help run another print company without having to
worry about your own stress.
Yeah, and all the upfront costs and all that. Is
that where I printed, I don't even know if you remember this, I printed Devin's business cards. It was like a cardstock photo with gold foil. Yes. And that's when I had met you.
Yes.
Like met you outside of parties.
Yeah. It was over in Irvine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
We did that.
You said business cards, and it made me think of Devin's business cards.
Yeah. We did all that, and I remember because Kyle was like, "Oh, that he owns a Hidden House," and I was like, "Oh,
that's
okay."
Right. He was there too.
Kyle was there, just a mutual friend of ours, and once he left 7 Media, I had to figure out how to run the business side of it. I didn't know how to do business, how to run business, bookkeeping, taxes, any sort of legal pay. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to run the business side of it and at the same time grow our clientele. And I did that for about 4.5 years, and it just burned me out. I grew in my skill set because we would outsource everything.
Yeah.
So like the SEO, the web design, the graphic design, the video, everything, we outsourced all of it. Then I just started wanting to provide more value to customers. And I said, well, I got to learn how to do websites. I got to learn how to do SEO. I got to learn how to help with social media. And I started just learning by doing. Mm-hmm. And I was just a one-man show. I never grew. There's different opportunities to have salesmen and things like that. But I think just like we were talking about in the last episode, I got really comfortable. And there's really no challenge. I didn't have anyone to hold me accountable. I didn't have, because I was doing it by myself. I'd go in this office by myself. I felt like a crazy person. and it was, there was a lot, and I had a ton of failures, and I got really, really bad at handling setbacks, because typically when you're in a fight or you're in business, you in a fight especially, you can punch back.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you hit me? Yeah, that's a setback, but I can hit you back. I didn't know how to hit back in business, and it just kind of buried me. So I went back to the whole 9-to-5 thing, and I've been really fortunate to have a job, especially through these COVID times, But I'm starting to get this like refuel, this fire to start up again, because I have people like you in my life, and Billy, and I got, all these guests that are talking about all their passions and their whys, and I'm like, man, like you lost it.
Yeah.
I lost that. And when I lay my head down at night to go to sleep, the only thing I think about is like, all right, God, like, what should I start another business? Should we just take off with the podcast and just focus on the podcast? Should I go into other business ventures? There's so many people that I know and relationships that I've built, and I feel like I haven't utilized them.
Yeah.
So for me, for setbacks, I haven't been the best at dealing with them. I'm almost in the middle of dealing with them. How do you deal with setbacks? Because you have brick and mortars, you have employees, you're responsible for people, and there are certain setbacks that you have to deal with almost on a daily basis. And then how do you stay motivated every day, man? Like, dude, what is it?
That is such a loaded question. And honestly, like we were last week with Trong, he was talking about how he had, he couldn't pinpoint setbacks.
Yeah.
Obviously you'd probably have to sit there and think of it, but since we hit him on the spot with it, he's probably like, oh, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
For me personally, I take certain setbacks and I like kind of compartmentalize them.
Yeah.
Can't think of that word.
You got it.
But then I like use them as fuel, right? It's like you're stoking the fire a little bit. So some setbacks for me are like, I don't know, Hidden House expanded from 1 to 4 brick and mortar locations in a fiscal year. At the same time, we opened up our first restaurant/beer garden. At the same time, I was going to night school to get my business degree. And at the very, very same time, I got married. And so I had all this stuff happen, right? It was a whirlwind of just chaos. Like, and from the outside looking in, you would think of it as like, dang, like they're crushing it, they're going for it. And yes, we were. Don't get me wrong. Like, we were fortunate to be in the positions we were in. And I realized real quick that sometimes less is more. And some of the setbacks for me during that cycle was going from the high of having all these things, right? Going from, these aren't true numbers, I'm just using them as an example, but going from, 15 employees to a total of 80 throughout all our businesses, like all these things, like so many rad things, providing jobs, meeting new people, experiencing new business lessons. And it was just like all this whirlwind of stuff. And then I realized I cannot do all of this on my own, all at once, all the time. It's just not going to happen. And so when we made the decision to close our restaurant and try to just sell off, essentially, I mean, we sold the restaurant. We didn't sell the business. We sold the restaurant. There's a difference. You're selling basically assets and clientele versus an actual restaurant with a brand and sales and all that other stuff. And so when we made that decision to close it and adapt and find a way to get out, that was a huge setback, right?
Yeah.
I dealt with things like, man, that's embarrassing. I'm worthless. Like, I let all these people down. I let our investors down. I let my parents down. I let my new wife down. I let all these people down because I failed. And it was something like I honestly kind of struggled with it for, it was a little while. But then I honestly just had one of those moments where I was like, I failed at this particular venture, but I found a successful way to get out of it. Instead of just like kind of dwelling in, oh, poor me, like just feeling stuck, I at least found a way to get us out successfully. It wasn't obviously what we wanted to do, but it was a way to help us take what we did, learn, move on, get out. Yeah, I failed at that particular venture, but the second I realized that failure, kind of projected me to not make those same mistakes ever again, that's a success in that component.
100%.
That failure turned to me being able to learn, hey, A, B, C, D, we're never going to do D and E ever again.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to be smarter. I'm going to make more strategic moves. The second I was able to kind of take that failure and turn it into a life learning lesson, a business learning lesson, a man learning lesson was the second I think that I was like, okay, setbacks can be great. Yeah, they suck in the moment and they're catastrophic in the moment, but learning how to take that setback and make yourself stronger, just like as an athlete or a fighter, right?
Yeah.
You take a loss, you watch some tape, you learn from it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, let me learn from that, let me be better, and let me not ever make those mistakes again. I think the ones that can actually adapt that into their life and actually do that find themselves down the road in a much better position. I mean, I didn't really answer how do I deal with setbacks, but in a way I kind of did. Like, I take setbacks now as a learning lesson. I mean, yeah, they suck in the moment, don't get me wrong. Like, you over the last year, you and I have talked about different things that I've dealt with, and it's like, yeah, some of them are awful and some of them are crushing, but at the end of the day, I'm healthy. I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, but at the end of the day, I'm healthy. I have a beautiful family. God's blessed me with so much more than I deserve. And it's one of those things where, yeah, things do suck, but can't dwell on them. You know, you gotta figure out how to get through them, get past them, and move on to different things that you use those setbacks to like help project you.
Do you think it's good that you had almost like a distraction with still having Hidden House and still having to run that business, because you have to keep moving forward?
Oh, you know? Yeah, man. Like, I think if it would have only been one business and that I kind of failed at and had to start over, I think that would be hard. But at the same time, it's like that double-edged sword. Having another business was hard because I had to look at those people every day. And you know what some of them are thinking. Like, they would never say it to your face, but you know what some of them are thinking. Oh, this guy failed. What a joke. You know, like, or look at this guy. He thought he could do it, but he couldn't. Like, you know, they're thinking that, or, oh, and he's the owner. I should be the owner. I wouldn't have failed. Like, those little things. Yeah, you know, they're thinking it, but honestly, I don't care. Like,
but they don't try it. You know, at least you tried it. It's like Trong was saying. Like, you don't know if you're gonna like chocolate ice cream. Unless you try it.
Exactly. And then you might not like it, and then you keep trying flavors until you like it. I now discovered, like, I never want to own another restaurant ever again. Like, to the restaurant tours out there, like, man, y'all are tough, because that's something I never want to do again. Yeah. Would I invest in one? Probably not. It's one of those things where I love restaurants, I love food, I love cool concepts. But owning a restaurant, unless you're going to be actively involved in the day-to-day, like, it's
just a tough business to get into.
Yeah, like I learned that I don't ever want that again.
We've had setbacks too from using, just in the podcast. Yeah. You know, using your garage, using friend studios, and then
the newest one that we just had, which, I mean, and this isn't to like stab at anybody or anything like that, but, you know, we had equipment that we thought was ours. Yeah. And, you know, as a smaller startup podcast, you know, obviously all the sponsors and stuff that we have and the personal finances that we have into the podcast, that wasn't allocated for things that we thought we already had. Yeah. So just this last week or two, we had to scramble around trying to buy and find new microphones. Yeah. And those are the things that we've talked about in the past. Like, people don't see that stuff. Like, dude, and for a small podcast to drop, just so you guys know, microphones aren't, you know, they're not cheap. So for us to have to arbitrarily come up with close to $1,000 out of, you know, thin air, it's like, well, shoot, what do we do? Thankfully, we were good with our sponsors and stuff like that, and we were able to utilize that. But it's just those little, that's a mini setback, but in the grand scheme of things.
But those type of situations are what make it nice to have a partner.
Oh, for sure.
Because the moment I found out, you were the first person I called.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, bro, we have a little bit of a setback. Like, what do we do?
Yeah, and we were supposed to film like a couple days later, which made it even
harder. It was tough.
Film, record, whatever.
But now you can bounce ideas. You know, you have a friend that is connected, and I was like, hey, call him. Like, we should buy him through him right away. And, you know, because these microphones for you guys that don't know or aren't in the industry, are very hard to come by right now, because during COVID, everyone and their mom started a podcast.
Yeah.
And so these are literally sold out in a ton of different places.
Yeah. Or you can go like on randomly like Craigslist or something like that, and they're jacking the price up by a lot.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
And so that was, for me at least, that was nice, because you've talked about it before, how when we partnered up, I was at a point where I was like, I don't want to do this by myself anymore. Like, I can't. Not that I can't, it's just
you don't want to.
It's I
understand.
And you were like, hey, I don't want to go into something by myself. Like, you wanted to start a podcast originally, and we just happened to come together. You know, I feel like we get along and have a good relationship. Yeah. So I was like, hey, let's figure this out. And it's been really, really nice to be able to call someone and bounce ideas off of each other, or meet before we record and say, hey, what can we talk about today? What subject can we touch on? And it just, it gets for me at least, it gets my creative juices going.
Yeah.
And it's okay, what can we do? What can we touch on? Because there's a million different subjects and a million different things we can talk about in business and athletics, in both of our worlds combined. And now with the podcast, we can share stories and be transparent with our two listeners. And, and you guys can look at my glorious mustache. It's insane. And so good. Just to clarify, this probably will never happen again. One, my wife hates it, and our football season's over. I coach high school football at a local school, and I told my players, I said, hey, look, if you guys play well this week, next week I will shave a mustache for you, because I look like an 80s porn star. And I was like, all right, I'll do it.
He asked me if I had a razor. I was like, nope. Which I actually don't, because I
He's lying.
got that baby.
I saw the whole thing.
Dude, I don't shave.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's setbacks are definitely inevitable. They're gonna happen. They're gonna take place. You know, a lot of times the cheesy quote where if it's like, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
It's so true though. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And kind of like what Chong was saying last week is like, dude, it's the risk, leaving that comfortable 9 to 5. But for him, it was a matter of he wanted to take care of his parents. Like that's a pretty driving motivator. If you don't have a motivator like that, of course it's going to be hard to leave comfort. And that's, where we were saying is learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable is a lot harder to do. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. But it's like boot camp, going through Marine Corps boot camp. Did I find that it was as hard as I thought it was going to be, or everyone made it out to be? Absolutely not. At least the physical component. Yeah. Because, I was 18 and in shape, and the physical part was whatever. The mental component was different, because they're literally trying to just break you down and make you feel like nothing so they can rebuild you a certain way. Yeah. But there's a reason why not very many people go through the military, let alone like the Marine Corps, right? Like if it was easy, everyone would do it. And it's one of those things where being comfortable in the uncomfortable, I wish I could have told myself that when I was 18, right? Like learning to embrace the suck, like literally.
But do you think that's a fair question? I know we ask it a ton, but if you didn't go through those things, or you knew the things you know now, you wouldn't be, if you were like, hey, if I can just travel back in time 10 years and tell my younger self this, the trajectory of my life would be a little bit different.
100%.
But going through that made you and forced you into decisions that you had to make, and made you the person you are now. Yeah. So is it just like, I guess it's just a fun question to ask, because you're almost giving, even though you're hypothetically talking to yourself, you're almost giving someone else in that age or in that position that advice. That's like, true. Hey, like this is what I learned. Yes, I am who I am now because of that path and where my life took me and the decisions I made and the things I learned. But if you're listening and you're 23 and you're thinking about starting a business, or you're thinking about getting into fighting, or you're thinking about whatever, and if I can give that person some advice, like you're talking to yourself, but realistically you're giving someone else advice that is maybe going through something similar. And if they can learn from that, and we've talked about it a ton, that's always our goal, is just to help, one person. Yeah. Out of the 2 listeners we have, if one of them listens, then great.
If we only had 2 listeners, that would be embarrassing. But we'd probably keep doing it.
Well, probably, yeah.
We only have 3 listeners.
But yeah, no, I think for me, I wanted to kind of touch on that and go into a specific story, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to shed light on. What I definitely want, and we'll talk about this on air so we can hold ourselves accountable to it, is not the next episode, but maybe the episode after, is I want to start going more into like your military story, why you got into it, share some cool insights that people may not know, and I also want to start touching on your business coaching.
Yeah.
Just because for you guys that don't know, not only does he own Hidden House, he's also Ben has started a business coaching, has been certified, is already currently working with a couple businesses, but I think it's a unique perspective for people to know, or our listeners to know, like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, this is who we are.
Yeah.
And this is why maybe we are able to share the things we share, is because we've been through them.
Yeah. We're like not just arbitrarily talking from the bleachers.
Like, I didn't read some blog and was like, hey, let's talk about that today.
No, exactly. I think the biggest takeaway from today is like learning to be able to take your setbacks or your failures or your obstacles or your doubts, whatever you want to call them, and literally just taking them and using them as fuel. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but it's not. I'm a big believer in, like, you have a choice. You have a choice to do something, or you have a choice not to do something. It's easily that simple. It's to do or not to do. Yeah. Whatever you choose to do in between doesn't exist. There's 2 options: do it or don't do it. Yep. And I'm a big believer on that. I'm not saying I do everything I say I'm going to do, but I'm a big believer, and you only have 2 choices. So whether I choose to do the right or wrong, is you only have 2 choices. Yeah. So just taking all those things, the setbacks, the failures, the obstacles, the doubts, the worries, the hesitations, and doing something with them to make yourself better. Yeah. Like, that's the one thing. Awesome. Dang, dude, I should write a dang book. We should right now. You can start writing kidding. It. All right, guys. Well, again, thanks for listening. Just remember to please share, subscribe, follow us on social media, and messages if you guys want us to talk about anything specific. Yeah, please do that. That'd be dope. Good? Yeah, yes, sir. All right. Remember that everything was impossible until someone did it. So, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Fight Within Podcast. Find us on all audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere you guys like to listen to it. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for continuing to listen to it and watch it. We can see the growth on our analytics, and just want to thank you guys for supporting us. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Kingdom Nutrition. Make sure you guys go and visit their site over at kingdomnutrition.com and enter promo code MFW10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Kingdom Nutrition carries the best sports supplements on the market. They manufacture and curate their own line of supplements with the highest quality ingredients, including a lean protein, weight gainer protein, pre-workout, BCAAs, and an array of other products. They've recently created the world's first vegan chickpea protein, and it tastes amazing. I'm a big dude. I like food, and I like chocolate. So when they told me it comes in chocolate and vanilla, I got really happy. But if you're a workout enthusiast and you want to change up your diet, change up your protein, go check out their vanilla chickpea protein. It mixes well with anything. It'll blend great with a smoothie. So to get your hands on any of these products, just make sure and go visit kingdomnutrition.com. Remember to enter promo code MFW10 and get 10% off your next purchase. Let's go.